And first of all, you're welcome in. Thanks for your statements. Just a few things I want to get my head around. There's 30,000 hectares on basically bog or peatlands that you're getting rid of. Have you sold some of those lands already in the last year or two?
No, we haven't.
You've sold none to the national parks?
So the national parks, that particular transaction is actually a historic transaction that goes back to 2018, I believe. And I appreciate that.
Is it sold or not? No.
It's on a long-term lease.
Okay.
Yeah, long-term lease. I think it's 4,500 hectares wild in Effin, in Ballycroy National Park.
Right, that's lovely, thanks. In the line of the 30,000 hectares, are you going to be re-wetting this yourselves?
The 30,000 is redesign, is the term we're using, because it's hard to be specific
Well,
right now in terms of
redesign?
re-wetting and rewilding, so it'll be a combination of both,
Right,
Deputy.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, will you be doing that yourself?
Yes, we will be doing that work, yeah.
So you're going to do that 30,000 hectares.
Yeah.
You have 90,000 hectares as well on biodiversity out of the 440.
Yes.
What's the total area you have for basically commercial timber at the moment?
As a primary goal of wood, about half the estate, about 250,000 hectares of the estate, and then probably approximately another 50 to 60,000 where we would still be harvesting wood, but it wouldn't be the primary objective.
Right. Is there?
That's just the spruce now, or?
Yeah,
Spruce,
it would be mainly Sitka spruce and a combination then of other conifers as well, pines and firs.
Is there a planting obligation on those 30,000 hectares, or are you going to be let out that from the department? Or?
From a redesign point of view, if we're going to rewild, we will be meeting the reforestation obligation because we'll be creating a new forest. If it's
so you don't have to replant it?
If we replant it, if it's rewilding, we will be replanting. If it is rewetting, we're removing the trees, so we need to get a license to remove.
I didn't hear you right there. Did you say for rewilding we're rewetting or replanting?
If we're rewilding, we will be replanting a forest. Okay. It'll be a semi-natural wilderness, so we'll be creating a wilderness forest.
To be a different type of timber.
Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly. It
will be something associated with that area.
It's accepted as the obligation.
Yeah, you'll have covered yourselves in this.
Correct.
So the 100,000 hectares will be extra on top of that. It won't be included. This 30,000 hectares won't have to be put into that.
No.
Okay. So you have 50,000 hectares. What are you cutting a year in cubes or hectares?
2.7 million cubic meters gross, about 7,000 hectares.
7,000 hectares a year, right? So, and in the line of the 100,000 hectares, the vision you have on that. I was just looking up the stats in relation to the amount of land that's sold in Ireland each year. There's about, look at in 2019, I think there was something like 29. There was just over 29,000 acres sold, and in the line of 2019, or some years before that, in fairness, there was up to 60,000 acres, which would be 25,000 hectares, 30,000 hectares, let's say. Or, but if you're doing 100,000, is it 100,000 hectares? Yeah. Over the
yes,
so you're going to do 3,000 hectares a year roughly for 30 years, or 3,300. You're going to be in the market for 10% of all the land that's going to be sold at best in Ireland, and you're surely not going to be competitive in the Golden Vale, I presume, where land will be making 20,000 an acre. So you're going to be
taking very flahuluk, so you are.
Pardon?
You're getting very flahuluk.
No, I'm just, no, but what I'm saying is, and I'm being very clear, that in the line of the land, you're not going to be able to compete with someone that's given 20 or 25,000 for land. And in the areas that you'll be competing for land, I presume, when you do the percentage, it'll be 30 to 40% of the land that's above marginal that you'll be competing for, which is in the West and in the Midlands. Is that fair to say?
I'd say, Deputy, in overall terms, I mean, I hear you in terms of the amount of land that comes for sale on an annual basis. In terms of our target, it'll be 2,000 to 3,000, ramping up over time. Yeah. And we do see the acquisition of land, which we don't have a land bank, as an important component of how we clearly achieve the 100,000 hectares.
I didn't ask you about the importance. I understand your importance. What I am saying is that when you look at the amount of land, when you analyse it, which I've done, when you look at the land that goes 20,000 and 25,000, and the lands that are of a lesser quality, which a lot of it is in the west, northwest, down as far down as parts of Kerry, and you come out to the Midlands, and some other parts of Tipperary and different places where land mightn't be just as good a quality. When you add the percentage to that comes together, and when you look at what you're looking for, it could be 25 to 30% of all the land that goes for sale that you'll be fighting for with farmers. Would that be fair to say?
I think it's
Yeah, well, I think firstly, one piece we're missing here is we're looking at public land as well, okay? So there is opportunity, we're talking to local authorities, other public agencies.
What percentage of the 100,000?
We don't know the detail of that yet, Deputy, okay? So what we're doing here, to be clear, is it's a very ambitious target, and we recognise that. But we think that we think the Coillte should be operating around 20% of afforestation. And there's no point us coming out and saying we're going to do 20% of the.
Well, do you see the worry that's out there among the farming communities that you're maybe competing for 1 in every 3 acres right around in the marginal areas?
I'll absolutely get to that point, because I do absolutely understand the nature of your question. What we're doing here, though, is a long term. It's 2050. We could come out and say 20% to 2,000 at the minute, which is not good enough. Like we know we need to increase planting to 8,000 hectares. We need to be part of that. Private forestry companies need to be part of that, and the farmers are going to have to do the lion's share of that because they own the land. So what we determined then was we need to get to 18%. That's the stated target by 2050. So that's even beyond 8,000 hectares. So we need to be part of this. How are we going to be part of it? Firstly, looking at public lands. There's an opportunity for us to help other agencies and with our expertise and the plants that we have to be able to create new woodlands there. There's a proportion then that are going to have to be acquired on the open market, and that is the biggest challenge with our ambition, is how you acquire the land. There's no doubt about that. But on your point of driving land prices up, there's only a point, and you've made that point yourself, there's only a point where we can get in to get land for forestry. Okay. So it's not in our interest to drive up the price of land, and we have to do that very responsibly.
Right. In media reports, there is media reports, and we need this put to bed fairly quick, about an English investment company and yourselves tying up together, and it has been out in the media, so I can say it then once it was printed on the papers. I don't want to get the chair in any trouble. Gresham House was being basically put in the can with G. Is there any connection whatsoever through finance, through SPVs, through any system that you're tying up with Gresham House, that they would be drawing grants or you would be drawing the grants? Because I'm looking at a document here from the Scottish Parliament, who have claims in the 10th of November that Gresham House hasn't been a great success story in Scotland. Is there any truth in that, just the way that people out there will know?
So, Deputy, in terms of when we launched our vision, we were very clear on the ambition of 100,000 hectares, which you've referenced. Yeah. And we were also very clear in our engagements that there is very, very substantial capital required in order to enable the 100,000 hectares up to 2 billion in terms of cost between now and 2050. And in our engagements, we have been clear that we will need to access capital to do that, and that will require 2 forms of funds. So the first fund is a fund that is already set up. It is the Nature Trust, and its purpose is to deliver new afforestation in terms of native woodlands. And also to undertake potential nature rehabilitation. And that would raise money from, effectively, we would call them ESG or impact investors. So they're investors that are not looking for, we call it a traditional return. They want to make an impact in terms of what they do. So that is the Nature Trust, is what it is known as. So that is the first type of fund that has been launched. The second is more focused on what we would call traditional long-term investors.
Just 1 second. Who's in the directorship of Nature Trust? So
the Nature Trust includes, so it has, the partners are forestry partners, and there are Coillte representatives on it.
Who's forestry partners?
So Forestry Partners is an organisation that was set up with a view to delivering impact, innovative Forestry and Nature Solutions, which is headed up by a gentleman called John Beckett, and we'd be happy to come back to the committee if you wished with more details in terms of that.
So there's private people involved in this, yeah?
Well, effectively, it's a joint operation between Quilta and Nature Partners.
And are they drawing any grants on the land then?
So effectively, there are grants and premia that will be
So they're drawing it from the government and you're involved in it?
So effectively, it has been set up to ensure that grants and premia can be enabled as part of the delivery of new native woodland in Ireland.
Right, so that's for the native woodland?
That is correct.
Where are you financing the commercial woodland?
So in terms of the commercial woodland, that will require a more traditional fund, as it were, where you would be accessing and seeking to access long-term investors who would be focused, and that fund would be more focused on productive forestry. And in terms of that, the level of capital that is needed, we can't and don't have ourselves, so we do need to access capital. And then to answer your specific question, what I will say and can say is that we are in advanced stages of engagement in terms of that fund, but there is further to go. And because it involves third parties, I'm not in a position to say at this point the third parties that are involved.
Will the third parties that will be involved be drawing grants through a special purpose vehicle or any system when it's set up?
So when it is set up, the reality in terms of delivering afforestation in Ireland is that grants and premia are needed as part of the enabling of that. So effectively, the fund will be seeking access to grants and premia. And what's very important, if I could say, is that in terms of the engagements that we're having, what is very pleasing and very important is that there's very significant interest from Irish investors as well as international investors, but Irish investors in terms of the fund. And I would also like to add that the scale of the challenge, not only in terms of accessing and identifying land, as you've mentioned earlier, but also the scale of challenge in terms of the capital requirements to deliver the afforestation targets in the Climate Action Plan is so significant.
So Nature Partners was set up on the 1st of November 2021, is that right?
That's approximately right.
The directors are Mr. Caulfield, Mr. Feeney, Mr. Bearcroft,
yes,
and Mr. Beckett.
Yes.
So these are private investors, are they?
Well, effectively, what they are.
So they're drawing the grants, are they?
Pardon me. The Nature Trust is drawing the grants. So the
company.
The company trades as Nature Partner CLG. I'll pass over. If you want to go through the detail.
It's the same construct. The fund attracts investors. The Nature Trust are attracting ESG investors. They're not looking for a return on their capital. They're looking for public good value. And the traditional investors are looking for a return on their capital.
Someone is getting the money, the grants.
The fund owns the land. Therefore, the fund draws the grant. Quilta's role in this is threefold. One, to acquire the land. Secondly, to plant the land. And third, to manage the land as part of our existing forest estate. That's our role in this. The only way Quilta can get back into delivering the afforestation goals of the country and assisting in that is by drawing on third-party capital, because the level of expenditure is extraordinary. It's over 2 billion.
Yeah, but to put it simple, what Quilta done one time, down through the years, they went in on the planted land. They didn't draw the grants. The farmer drew the grants if they were doing planting themselves. But Quilta went in and never drew the grants. What you're doing now, you're tying up with private investment funds, be it through the commercial side or through the broadleafs, if you are native timber, or through the commercial side, and someone else is going to be drawing the grants, but you're going to be tied in with them. And that facts.
We're going to be managing the forests. And
no, but the grants are going to be drawn, yes or no?
Absolutely, but that's the same as it is for any. That's the same as it is for any private individual or private investor in the country. If they want to plant land, they can avail of grants and premiums.
Explain this to me. Are you going to be managing these forests then?
Yes.
Yes, we will.
And what's the deal? Explain the deal to me. Tell me that if I buy land and I'm a nature trust and I have my directors, I'm accountable for those directors. Have you done some lease scheme, or what type of a scheme is done that you're going to be managing these forests? Because Culture never were managers of forests, they owned all the forests.
So effectively, in terms of the Nature Trust and the more long-term traditional investor, we would be the forest manager. So the forests would be managed under all of the open access principles of Quilta Forests. So there would be the availability of recreation facilities, the availability of tracks and trails, and we would also be enabling the planting of those forests in the first place and the sourcing of land for that.
So you're not going to, like this big headline that you're going to buy 100,000 acres of land, it's actually pure BS what it is. It's basically a statement coming out. What you're going to be is the forest managers, where investment companies are going to be drawing the new grants that's coming out. Isn't that fair to say?
Well, what we have said is that we would enable the creation of 100,000 hectares of new forests, and the way we will do that, we've outlined, is through the traditional investor and the impact investor. And what's important in terms of all of this is the scale of challenge that is ahead in terms of afforestation is hugely significant. The country needs to plant 8,000 hectares per annum, and there is much to go in terms of achieving that target.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what the scale is. The scale of the small farmer in the areas where private investment companies, not ye, will be coming in, but you're going to be the people that will be running the forest, and you'd be competing with them farmers, but they'll be drawing the grants now that you never drew before. That's the reality of what's happening. Well, could you tell me, Nature Partners?
I might give Ms. Hurley a chance to answer that.
If I may, Deputy, the scale of challenge in terms of the 8,000 hectares, so 2,000 to 3,000 hectares per annum is what Quilta is targeting to enable the creation of. There's a role for Quilta in terms of delivering that scale. There's also a role very much for the forest management companies, and indeed, very importantly, for landowners and farmers who choose to plant their land. I believe that the scale of the challenge is so significant that everybody needs to play their part, and we're very clear that no one will be squeezed out, because there is so much to do that actually, if anything, what we need is more people attracted to the sector. Capital is needed for the sector to deliver the scale of targets that are ahead.
Can you not go to the EU, to the investment banks? Will they not give you money?
I think I just need to clarify something. In Quilta, when we've done afforestation since we were established, as any afforestation we've done, grants and premia have been involved. They were involved directly to the organisation until a point in time where it was deemed a state aid, so that stopped. Then we're working in partnership to get grants and premia. This is the same way. So on several times we've come in to the committee, we've been asked, why are Quilta not facilitating the government target of delivering afforestation? The only way we can is by acquiring land. We don't have any more of it. So for us to acquire the land, it's to either work with public bodies, which we shouldn't lose the focus on that, that's a really important part of this, or to acquire land. For us to acquire land, you simply cannot do afforestation in Ireland without grants and premia. So there has to be a mechanism to do that. So when you're saying that it's just 100,000 and we're not actually involved, we're key to be involved in it as a manager, and that's a very positive thing, because we can bring our skill and we can manage it as an open forest.
You're managers.
But the capital will come from third parties.
If I am a manager of a hotel, I don't own the hotel. Just to be clear, if I manage it, I run it.
You can also manage and own, so we manage and own mini forests as well.
Could you just tell me about another thing? I was reading your financial statement. Nature Partners, what are they? Are they a company?
So Nature Partners is a company itself. So Nature Partners CLG is the company. The actual, the name that it trades under for raising capital is Nature Trust. So you may also have come across that name.
And why have you no shares in that?
Pardon me?
You have it down as that you have basically no shares in it, or no hold in it.
Effectively, it is a not-for-profit entity. It is focused entirely on creating.
And is that buying land as well, yeah?
So in terms of that, what we are doing is supporting the acquisition of the land for the purposes of delivering that new native woodland, because it doesn't have any land of its own. And the impact investor is then delivering the funds for the purpose of enabling the creation
I'll
of
just
the farms.
summarise it, that what I can see happening is that the 30,000 hectares you'll be re-wetting. There's going to be a battle around the country for land, because you now have investment companies coming in that ordinary farmers will not be able to compete with. And it's a sad day for the average land in rural Ireland, because those farmers that are trying to survive in it won't be able to survive, because they'll have investment crowds that's looking at 30 years, 40 years investment, and you're going to be managing it, which is a far cry from where Coillte was when I was a young lad.
Okay. Senator